Magnetometer readings just spiked to critical levels. Historical data shows attacks follow within 72 hours. I'm tracking the West Coast, New Madrid Fault Line, and Yellowstone. Stock food and water now. I'll update in 24 hours. We are living in a moment defined by data, but they are manipulating the feed right now. This is not a drill. Look at this screen. This is a real-time feed from a deep array magnetometer in the northern hemisphere. Notice the spike. It is not atmospheric static. It is a signature, clean and sharp, the kind that only comes from a terrestrial directed power source. It is the unmistakable sound of power being drawn from the Earth itself. The spike is so aggressive it momentarily glitches the feed, a fraction of a second of static that speaks volumes. The intensity of the spike is unlike any I have charted. It surpasses the historical maximum by nearly 15%. The air in the room suddenly feels heavy, a low-level buzz I can feel in my teeth, mirroring the frequency on the screen. The noise cancellation system on my microphone is struggling, capturing the faint, unsettling whine of electromagnetic interference saturating the building. For years, I have tracked this specific frequency and I have found one constant. When the power hits this critical threshold, something bad happens on the surface within 3 days. 72 hours. That is the window we are in right now. The next sunrise will bring us closer to the point of no return. We must move faster than the shadow government operating this weapon. If the charge continues at this rate, the historical 72-hour window might be dramatically reduced. The system is already overstressed. A catastrophic failure, a fatal event, in the next 48 hours is now a distinct probability, whether intentional or accidental. My investigation started not with data, but with a piece of paper, a document that officially should not exist. It is a declassified 1960s United States weather modification memo, a relic of the Cold War, filed deep in a national archive under a classification code that made no sense. The paper felt brittle, almost too light, considering the weight of the secret it held. This memo detailed the purchase of massive, specialized power components. It specified a transformer capable of handling terawatts, power levels unheard of for simple scientific inquiry. The list included specialized cryo-cooling units designed to handle plasma-level energy transfer. These units were not for cooling equipment, they were for stabilizing a plasma field during directional energy transmission. The documentation meticulously outlined the process of generating a focused, synthetic ionospheric mirror capable of bouncing extremely low frequency waves back towards the Earth's crust. But the code used to file it is the exact alphanumeric sequence now reserved exclusively for the HAARP High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program facility in Gacona, Alaska. That is the anomaly. A weather experiment from the 1960s using the internal accounting code of a controversial facility decades before it even officially existed. This is not a filing error. This is a structural link, a code lineage proving that the true purpose of HAARP began as a bad weather operation. It confirms a decades-long program of atmospheric control, hidden in plain sight as scientific research. The language used in the memo itself was chillingly clinical, discussing ionospheric resonance with the casual tone of scheduling a routine maintenance check. The document referred to Earth's atmosphere not as a subject of study, but as a reactive transmission medium for energy. The earliest stated goal was the manipulation of major global weather systems, proving the project's ambition was planetary from its inception. The evidence is overwhelming. Now, the official story of HAARP is that it is simply an ionospheric research instrument. That is a lie of omission. Its true lineage is what they hide. The memo detailing the power components mentioned one thing that sent my investigation spinning into a vacuum: a specific, unnamed contractor group Alpha that handled the material delivery. I tried to pull the records for contractor group Alpha, and every single digital path led to a closed road. The records had not been deleted. They had been surgically replaced with digital dust. Too clean, too perfect. This is the nature of the shadow government, them. They do not end data. They simply make the paper trail so spotless, so perfectly archived under defunct company names and expired government contract numbers that no one bothers to trace it. The sheer completeness of the redaction is the evidence itself. It confirms deliberate, systemic concealment. I spent days mapping corporate shell companies and government liaison offices that were all supposedly shut down in the 1970s. The corporate structure was designed like a labyrinth, with every wall leading back to a single, impenetrable center. I found layers of shell corporations registered in 3 different offshore tax havens, all pointing back to one central holding group. The money trail was routed through blind trusts established in the early days of Cold War secrecy, predating modern financial surveillance. The goal was bureaucratic insulation, ensuring that no single congressional audit or investigative journalist could connect the money source to the physical project. The total capital expenditure, hidden across 3 continents, amounted to billions of dollars, dwarfing the publicly stated budget of the HAARP facility. Every connection led back to one singular name, heavily redacted in half a dozen files, but consistent across all of them. A.C. Thorne. Thorne was a ghost, a corporate executive with no discernible public life, yet his signature was on the purchase orders for the components referenced in the HAARP-coded memo. As I tried to dig deeper into Thorne's history, my screen briefly flickered, and the specialized digital tool I was using, the one that bypasses the government's protective firewalls, suffered a sudden, inexplicable electric surge and shut down. An equipment glitch? Or remote interference? The question hung heavy in the air, underscoring the immediate danger of this investigation. I managed to reboot the system. The power surge fried the circuit board, but before it went completely dark, it downloaded a last single file onto the desktop. It was an encrypted text file with no content except for the file name. The blood ran cold. The file proved they did not just track the data, they were tracking me personally. They had tagged me 2 years ago. It meant everything I had done, every search, every breakthrough had been monitored. They knew my location, my habits, and my research focus long before I found Thorne. The sheer patience of them, waiting years for the right moment to strike, was terrifying. I found an unsettling realization. Thorne was a key executive at a long-range telecommunications company that filed for bankruptcy in a spectacular, quiet collapse. The date of the bankruptcy? The very day the HAARP site in Gakona was officially declared operational. It was a transfer of assets, not a failure. They shut down the civilian front company because the weaponized project was finally complete. The personal stakes are rising. I am inside their system. I need to know what Thorne knew. I need to find out why Thorne risked exposing himself in the final hours of the transfer. Did he realize the terrifying scale of the weapon he helped create, or was he merely a disposable middleman? If he was an asset, his disappearance was too convenient, too easily written off. If he was a liability, his name should have been incinerated from the record. The unanswered question of Thorne's true loyalty, whether he was a victim or a willing participant, is a keyhole into the entire structure of the conspiracy. A deeper search revealed that Thorne's family home was sold to a government shell company just 6 months ago, suggesting his knowledge was finally bought and buried. Thorne's personal property records were the next thread. Not a suburban home or an apartment, but a rural address listed under an innocuous title: Substation 9, Power Grid Relay. This was not a house. This was a facility. This was the first physical, boots-on-the-ground location of the conspiracy. The moment I saw that address, I knew the stakes were about to go from historical contradiction to immediate physical danger. I packed a minimal bag, a satellite phone, and the proprietary data stick. Every minute wasted was a minute closer to the deadline. I left the apartment lights on, hoping to buy myself a few more hours before them realized I was gone. The tension in my chest was a physical reminder of the ticking clock, each breath measured against the 72-hour limit. The journey felt like driving into a pre-established trap, but Substation 9 was the only place the digital ghost became physical reality. I took 3 separate, erratic detours, a habit learned from years of studying counter-surveillance tactics, but the silence on the satellite phone suggested I was still alone for now. The drive to Substation 9 took hours, ending in a desolated, wooded landscape. The facility itself was heavily fenced, featuring high-voltage warning signs and cameras, the standard cloak for any sensitive government research facility. The silence here was not peaceful. It was oppressive, like the air itself was waiting. But it was the architecture that told the real story. This structure was supposedly a simple power relay station, transferring electricity from the main grid to local towns. But I analyzed the power input lines. They were massive, designed to handle power loads exponentially greater than what a simple substation would require. They were built to receive the energy of a small city and direct it into something else. A ghost power signature, waiting to be awakened. The transformers hummed with an unnatural, almost biological pulse, indicating they were perpetually ready to fire. The heat shimmering off the exterior walls, even in the cool evening, suggested massive, concealed energy conversion happening within. The security perimeter utilized military-grade thermal dampening, a redundant system unnecessary for a simple power relay. A series of large, unmarked generator cooling towers were partially visible behind a rise, far exceeding the requirements for a standard grid station and hinting at a second, independent power source. Then, there were the concrete foundations. They were far too massive, too deeply anchored for standard electrical equipment. The sheer volume of reinforced concrete suggested a structure built to withstand an internal eruption. They appeared specifically designed to counteract intense upward pressure. What kind of power station needs to be structurally anchored against forces pushing upward? The answer: an atmospheric weapon, a device that directs immense energy into the ionosphere. As I recorded the foundation dimensions, the low hum I had been detecting suddenly stopped. A sudden, deafening silence, followed by the distinct, heavy sound of a distant, massive door slamming shut underground. It sounded like a vault closing, sealing a secret beneath my feet. The lack of natural sound felt like a warning, a vacuum where nature had fled. I used a handheld Geiger counter, and while the radiation was not immediately unsafe, the persistent, low-frequency hum I detected was deeply unsettling. A constant background noise that was not natural. My seismometer recorded a brief sharp tremor seconds after the door slam, localized, deep, and artificial. The energy signature of the tremor suggested the activation of a massive, subterranean electromagnetic coil. The tremor was classified as a single, powerful P-wave, inconsistent with a natural seismic event, but perfectly matching the profile of a heavy internal impact or machinery engagement. I found a way into the facility's external maintenance shed, the last place they would think to hide a secret. It was dusty and cluttered with spare parts. I moved with professional silence, years of training kicking in as adrenaline replaced fear. I discovered a discarded, proprietary technical manual fragment. The sight of it made my blood run cold. It was a schematic diagram. It showed a high-power phase array not for communication, but for atmospheric modification. This was the definitive proof. The manual was not a civilian document. It was a military specification. The drawings used symbols and equations that spoke of controlled destruction, not research. One schematic detailed the sub-ionospheric injection protocol, confirming their goal was to excite, rather than merely study, the upper atmosphere. The array design featured a parabolic reflector grid capable of focusing the energy beam to a point size of less than 20 square kilometers. The power required for such precision targeting validated the terawatt specification in the original 1960s memo. The manual specified a pulse duration control mechanism, the ability to sustain the energy beam for hours or deliver it in a single devastating 5-second burst. And then I saw the note scrawled in the margin, a technician's hasty observation, phase array deployment, target latitude, 44.5. That is a highly specific coordinate. It is not Gakona. It is not Alaska. That latitude cuts a chilling line directly through the New Madrid Fault line, one of the most seismically volatile and structurally unstable regions in the entire United States. The official story is that HAARP is research. The true story is that the conspiracy is targeting American infrastructure. The scale of their planned deception was staggering. They were preparing to weaponize the heartland itself. The target was not just a natural fault line. It was a geopolitical weak point designed to cause maximum economic and social collapse. A subsequent note nearby referenced a secondary target overlay, listing a specific geological formation deep beneath the New Madrid seismic zone. The formation was a known ancient magma intrusion, a structure that, if stressed, would broadcast shockwaves across the entire seismic zone. The note included an estimated energy absorption rate for this magma intrusion, treating the Earth's interior like a giant vulnerable capacitor. The revelation of the manual fragment shifted the investigation from historical research to immediate intervention. The manual's atmospheric modification schematic suddenly made the initial spike in magnetometer readings terrifyingly clear. The magnetometer spike was not a warning, it was a power meter. The spike was HAARP initiating its sequence. The structural contradiction is undeniable. HAARP's research function is the veneer. Its actual function, destabilization, is proven by the frequency alignment protocols in the technical manual. The 72-hour pattern I tracked historically is the exact time required for the array to reach full charging capacity, preparing for deployment. The countdown to disaster had begun the moment the needle crossed the threshold. The physics were simple and horrifying. Electromagnetic energy focused into tectonic stress points. I cross-referenced the array's frequency with known natural seismic waves and found a precise harmonic match, the frequency capable of maximizing instability in the Earth's crust. The array was designed to pluck the Earth like a string, forcing the tectonic plates into a fatal resonance. The system was capable of exploiting the planet's own resonant frequency, a terrifying, elegant application of destructive power. I checked the time. Less than 48 hours remained. The situation had escalated from a theory to an active, time-sensitive crisis. The question was, what was the primary target? The New Madrid Fault line, or something larger? I received an anonymous, corrupted text message. The file contained only 3 sets of geographic coordinates, and they did not match the fault line. They perfectly matched the Yellowstone caldera. The coordinates confirmed a worst-case scenario, a geological event designed to shatter the continental infrastructure. The New Madrid Fault line might be the fuse, but Yellowstone was the nuclear option, capable of blanketing half the country in ash. The presence of 2 distinct targets implied a complex, staged operation designed to distract from the final, devastating outcome. The Yellowstone coordinates were labeled Contingency Alpha, suggesting the potential to unleash the supervolcano if the New Madrid strike failed to achieve its desired political result. The corruption in the message itself was a passive-aggressive threat, implying that even encrypted communication channels are vulnerable to them. The question became existential. Was the target a predictable fault line, or the ignition of a supervolcano? Was this a localized assault, or a planet-altering event? A countdown timer flickered onto the screen above my monitor, showing the 72-hour deadline the moment the array reached full charge. This was the point of no return. The investigation was over. Survival was all that mattered. The vastness of the betrayal was paralyzing, yet I had to move. I realized the true goal was not just to cause a disaster, but to demonstrate absolute, invisible control over the Earth's forces. I made the decision. The key was not stopping the charge, but broadcasting the evidence before the cover-up could begin. The only way to defeat invisibility is to make the evidence impossibly visible. My plan was reckless, sacrificing all future anonymity for one final, desperate attempt to expose the weapon and force an international reaction. I gathered the few items I needed and fled. Substation 9, just as 2 black, unmarked SUVs rounded the corner of the access road, deploying advanced surveillance equipment. They were here. The investigation was officially compromised, and my time had run out. The roar of their engines confirmed I was too late to remain hidden, but perhaps not too late to warn. I pushed my aging vehicle to its limit, the cold realization of being pursued, sharpening every instinct. I drove away, glancing down at a low-grade, real-time seismic map on my phone, which showed microtremors increasing exactly along the 44.5 latitude the New Madrid Fault. The array was beginning to resonate. The ground beneath my tires felt subtly different, vibrating with the immense, unseen power, focusing hundreds of miles away. The SUVs pursued without lights, black shapes gliding through the woods, confirming they did not want to be seen, only to catch me. The pursuit was disciplined, closing the distance slowly, showing a terrifying confidence in their inevitable capture. I am now in a secure location. The 72-hour mark passed away exactly 1 hour ago. There was no catastrophic event, no earthquakes, no Yellowstone eruption. The media is silent, or running small pieces about minor, unrelated geological activity off the coast. The tone should be one of relief, but mine is only caution. Did they pull the plug? Did they know I was close? Had the threat of exposure forced them to abort the full deployment at the last possible moment? The absence of a disaster felt less like safety and more like a tactical withdrawal by a superior enemy. The silence from the official channels was the loudest part of the cover-up, a coordinated global dismissal of the near event. The official denial mechanism activated perfectly, a false sense of normalcy imposed on the edge of catastrophe. I monitored the dark web, and even there, the chatter about the atmospheric anomaly was being systematically debunked by coordinated bots and paid analysts. I ran the satellite imagery. Officially, nothing happened. But high above the Yellowstone coordinates, my thermal scans picked up unusual, localized ionospheric heating signatures. Not an explosion, not a disaster, but a distinct, powerful release of energy into the atmosphere. This was evidence of a test or a partial deployment, a subtle probe of the system's capabilities, not the full catastrophic event. This proves them acted, even if the result was mitigated or delayed. The ionosphere was still scarred from the failed, or perhaps successful experiment. The signature left behind was a specific, high-frequency wave pattern, consistent with the proprietary manual I had found. The energy release was equivalent to a 10-megaton airburst, a massive wave of directed force that thankfully did not strike the surface. The thermal reading was so intense that the local weather satellites had briefly classified it as a localized solar flare anomaly. The thermal trace lasted for exactly 5 seconds, the precise burst duration referenced in the array's manual, confirming the test was a successful demonstration of short-burst, high-power capability. Then came the final, gut-wrenching piece of evidence. I received a new, highly encrypted data file. It was the original 1960s weather modification memo, fully decrypted. The final sentence, which was the target of the original heavy redaction, was now visible. It was simple, cold, and absolute. Project Aether is a continuous deployment initiative, requiring only periodic recalibration. The words did not suggest a program. They described a function, a constant, underlying power designed to reshape the planet indefinitely. The project name itself, Aether, suggested a desire to manipulate the very fundamental medium of the upper atmosphere. The memo concluded with a budget request for Phase 2, global resonance mapping, confirming their long-term intent to weaponize planetary fault lines worldwide. The final page contained a highly cryptic diagram showing the Earth encircled by 3-phase arrays, a suggestion that HAARP is merely one component of a global tripartite weapon system. The diagram included annotations suggesting the 3 arrays were strategically placed to allow continuous, 24-hour global coverage, leaving no corner of the planet outside their influence. It never stopped. The conspiracy did not end in 1960. It did not end in 1990. It is not an old weapon. It is an active system. The initial spike I saw was not the final end. It was the initial charge of a continuous weapon. The temporary silence is only a strategic pause. The immediate danger has passed away, but the hidden truth is far more unsettling. The conspiracy is permanent. This endless cycle of peril is the true weapon. They control the fear, the response, and the silence. They are not trying to cause the disaster all at once. They are testing their ability to start and stop it at will, proving absolute mastery. The true battle is not against a weapon, but against the constant, invisible manipulation of our shared reality. The conspiracy's structure is a closed loop, where every apparent failure is simply a successful data point for the next, more precise deployment. The only way to break this loop is to expose the full architecture, not just the single HAARP node, but the global tripartite system. I look at the magnetometer feed. The signal is rising. The background frequency has increased by 1.2 Hz. They are not waiting 3 days. They are operating on a tighter loop. The time between the spikes is shrinking. The recalibration is accelerating. The next charge cycle will be faster, more volatile, and less predictable than the last. The screen flickers as the magnetic fields begin to distort again, a visible sign that the planet itself is straining. The entire array is now running at a sustained, low-level power, ensuring the next critical spike will come without warning. I transmit the full data log, knowing the black SUVs are likely moments away from my location, but the information is finally out. We have 72 hours again, starting right now. This is the chilling truth. The 72-hour clock is always running. If the global system is active, if the next end is already being calibrated, then your understanding is the only defense we have left. The documentation, the coordinates, the structural evidence, it's all there, confirming the invisible threat is constant. Don't let this be silenced. If this story exposes a truth you need to see, if it raises questions that demand answers, then you know what to do. Subscribe right now to stay ahead of the next cycle, and hit the like button to signal that this forbidden knowledge cannot be buried. Comment below. What do you think the true goal of Project Aether is, if not immediate destruction? Share this video, because their power depends on our ignorance. I'll be back with the next update. Until then, stay vigilant.